Have you always wanted to direct, produce, or write your own independent feature-length film? Well, today's guest is a special person because she is a producer, an independent producer and line producer who's now part of the Producers Guild of America, also known as PGA. It's a very prestigious organization that mainly Hollywood producers are a part of. And this story of our today's guest, Lisa Bruhn, is a special story because it's about her story coming from an independent level, from pretty much knowing nothing about independent producing to going to $1 million budgets in the PGA. It's a very insane story, and she also goes into how she had to sacrifice to make that independent feature happen. But more importantly and more encouraging for everybody, it's a story about how you can make and sell your own independent feature film. And that's really exciting. And that's where I want to get personally as a director, the point where I want to be able to sell a product, right? I think I mentioned this on a previous episode. I want to be able to sell a product, and the product is the feature. Now, shorts are good practices for the feature, but the feature is the ultimate end goal for a lot of filmmakers. And it's a really tough and challenging task. And Lisa Bruhn talks about how she got a whole community together to make this film happen, called Carving a Life. You can look it up on pretty much everywhere: Amazon, Tubi TV. It's pretty much on a lot of the major platforms, including Roku, most recently. So anyway, I don't want to get in too much into it right now, but after the intro, I'm going to introduce our guest. Here we go. This is the Film Frat Podcast, episode 31.
This is the Film Fraternity Podcast, a show that's all about filmmaking in college, so you can turn your student projects into powerful portfolios. And now, here's the host of Film Frat House, Zach Sabo.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Film Frat Podcast. If you're new here, I'm Zach Sabo, your host. No longer a student anymore, which is, again, weird. I've said this before. I'm not a film student anymore. But if you're watching this on YouTube, you will notice that behind me is a new piece of furniture. I got this very nice gaming chair, which I've been needing for a while. I needed a chair to begin with. The one that I had previously was a flimsy chair that broke. Anyway, I'm excited about that. I don't know about how your week is going, how your Monday's going, or whenever you're listening to this, but it's 2021, and I hope you guys are enjoying your new year. It's going to be an interesting year for sure, especially as we reopen and make more films together, because I know that part of reopening is making films, and I know you guys are probably anxious as filmmakers to be able to not have to worry about going around all these restrictions, right? You have to add an extra layer of just precaution when you're making films, right? We want to go back to that freedom that we had before, where you can just go out and make the films that we want to make without having all these extra hurdles. But today's guest is a special guest. Again, I mentioned Lisa Bruhn. She's a producer out of the PGA, and man, like, her story just blew me away. One small thing, it's actually a big thing, but one thing she mentioned to me was how she had to sell her car at one point to make this independent feature happen. It's called Carving a Life. It came out in, I believe, 2017. It's now on most major streaming platforms, minus, Netflix and Hulu, but it is on Tubi and the Roku channel. It's on Amazon. So if you have Amazon Prime, you get it for free. And Tubi's also free, but it has ads. If you don't know what Tubi.tv is, or Tubi.com, don't know which, just look up Tubi. It's an AVOD platform, which is basically meaning advertisement video on demand. So expect ads when watching anything on Tubi, but that's how I watch the film because I don't have Amazon Prime. So that was a really cool option. Same thing with the Roku channel. I believe they use AVOD as well. It's a really cool thing because it gets your name out there. It gets your film out to more audiences who don't pay for streaming services like Netflix and Hulu. So it's actually a great way for independent directors and producers to get their work out and sell, which is what I'm really interested in, what I actually asked a lot of questions about when I interviewed Lisa. So without further ado, I'm going to get right into this interview. This is me and my conversation with Lisa Bruhn. All right, Lisa Bruhn is in the house. How are you, Lisa? It's good to finally meet you. I heard a lot about you from the Film Consortium, San Diego.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I love to share my journey and help others as others helped me throughout the process. It's nice to
Awesome.
finally meet you too.
Yeah, and I heard that you were a pretty prominent producer. Is that right, in the San Diego film community? And I assume you're branching outwards into LA, right?
Yes, LA and New York and other places. So definitely moving quickly in the producing world.
That's cool. What was the point where you got started? Because I feel like it was not that long ago where I heard about your film, which we talked off air about. This was your first feature called Carving a Life, and that came out, I believe, in 2017. Am I correct?
Yeah, it was released in 2017. We started the process in 2013. And I got into filmmaking through my son, Tyler Bruhn, who is an actor. And I wanted to write a short film for him to star in. And I had a story that I wanted to tell with a story in and around an alcoholic and the effect on the family around him, too, because everybody seems to have that. So many people seem to have that experience in their life. And a lot of films I saw were focused in and around the alcoholic themselves, but not as much of the family. So for me, it was a passion project. And it was a project where we could work together. So he was older. It was something that we can work on and spend time together and develop together. So that was fun. And I had been interested in travel writing before. So I thought, well, let me try screenwriting. I've been in business for the past 30 years. So business really was my background. And at the time was in semiconductor equipment sales. And so we had this idea, well, let's write this short, film together. So we started down that path and we started researching and learning together, informal training at that time. So we would get DVDs and watch webinars and read and books. And so we started teaching ourselves throughout the process of writing and story development. And then at a certain point, Tyler was going to classes with Terry Ross, a local prominent actor coach, who also has a degree in directing. And so he said, well, we should reach out to Terry about getting involved in the project because we clearly need people who know more about this than we do. And so we did, and she was really intrigued about it as well. And she helped develop the storyline and such, and dialogue, and has a real good focus for actors. And so it evolved into a feature film from the short film because the story, the way that we wanted to tell it, really expanded beyond a short film. A lot of short films really need to be around 7 to 10 minutes. Well, we were already at 45 pages, 50 pages. So we thought, well, let's just expand it to a feature. Not realizing what that meant until later.
I'm sure it was a lot of work and a lot of writing on your part. I mean, did you even know that this would become a feature at some point? I mean, because you were writing the script for the most part, right?
Yeah, yep, yeah, I was. And so I got Final Draft and I figured out how to use Final Draft on my own. And I have probably 15 books on screenwriting. And so I was, learning and developing and evolving and getting some input from Tyler, getting input from Terry. And it took 6 months. I started the Weekend of Sundance in 2013. I started writing it that weekend in January. And I had time, that time to just, I was actually playing a lot of games like Candy Crush and such on my phone. I thought, well, if I just don't do that for 2 hours a day, I can just do that in the morning. I can write. And when I get home from work, I can write. And so I did that. And lo and behold, then I had a script.
There you go. Wow.
So
Power through
it
it.
evolved from that. And each step along the filmmaking process was just self-taught in the beginning. Later I went for, and I can tell you about that in a bit, but later I went for formal training because I realized how important that is.
Okay. Yeah, I was actually going to ask about that. Like, did you have any prior experience making films? And did you also go to college? What did you study? Things like that. What was your background?
Okay, prior experience making films, no, except for being on set with Tyler when he was a child. We would go to LA for projects. He was part of casting, background casting, so he'd get called up. He was actually in a featured background role in the OC, and
Hmm.
he was in a movie with Martin Lawrence, Rebound. And so he was 13, so me or his dad had to drive up there with him. So we were on set, and I found that fascinating, just seeing how it all comes together behind the scenes. And so to me, that was kind of fascinating, but I had no experience making films going into this.
Hmm.
So I just had to learn all along the way, screenwriting, production, post-production. So I just had to teach myself and do deep dives into research along the way. Um, and school, I have a bachelor's degree in business administration, and my background has all been in business. I also got further education in business management and, business this and business that.
Wow. Well, I'm sure that comes in
So,
handy when you're producing. I mean, you have to deal with budgets, right? And not everyone, especially as a student, you don't really think about budget because you basically have to just go out and shoot whatever you have
yep.
around you, right? And not everyone owns a
Yeah.
camera either. Not everyone can pay an actor or find props and things like that. So I'm sure that
Yeah,
business degree
all of
was
it came
good.
in handy with producing, all of it, really, all my background in terms of knowing spreadsheets and cash flowing and um, contracts, contract negotiations, selling, marketing. All my business background actually was helpful, really helpful in producing it. I couldn't have done it without it, I don't think, if I didn't have all that business background, because producing is business,
Right.
it really is all business.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so I guess now you talked a little bit about yourself. Could you talk about like again, like what inspired you to write this film in the first place, Carving a Life, and just how did this pre-production period progress into the production phase, and how did shooting go?
Okay, well, I think just one day I had an epiphany. I wanted to write this about film about alcoholism. And there are people in my family that have struggled with it. Um, I knew that AA, you know, is out there, but a lot of people don't like the 12-step process. And I had been exposed to Smart Recovery, which is based out of San Diego County. They have a big, not based out of San Diego County, but they have a big prominent presence in San Diego County. And Smart Recovery is an alternative program to the 12-step. And I thought, well, this would be good way to maybe help promote that as a, not in a business or financial way, but just as an alternative to people who maybe don't get the help they need because they don't want to do the 12-step program.
Mm.
So that was part of it also. And I did wrap in Smart Recovery towards the end with distribution to help promote the program with them in our premiere. And they
Mm.
were very helpful with that too. So
Mm.
in that sense, it was a passion project, and it was also just something I wanted to be able to work with my son Tyler, who's an actor. So it was a project that we could do together and fit into my passion for writing, because I really have a big passion for writing, and had done a lot of travel writing, and screenwriting was interesting too, taking something, an idea to paper and then to a visual medium.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. And not everyone, especially as students who are in film school or just wanting to do a passion project, don't even think about pursuing the feature at some point. We talked a bit about this off air, but we as students normally have to deal with short films and doing these on a deadline, like in the matter of a few weeks at times. And so putting that all together is good because it teaches you a little bit about, how to get things done at all, rather than just putting it off and forgetting about it. But it also teaches you how to do a lot with little. So I'm sure you
Yeah,
had to deal
short
with that
films
as
is
well.
definitely
What
the way to go.
was what was the budget situation like, and like how did you get everyone together for this film?
So with budget, we underestimated throughout the entire process because, this was the first film for us, first feature. And so there are things that we just didn't know about or didn't think about. And now that's one thing that I like to try to get out there to people who are new into filmmaking. And I do a lot of budgeting in development process, um, to help them understand all the different factors from a business standpoint that need to go into the budget, because I learned firsthand that way. So we started off thinking, oh, okay, this will be about $45,000 budget. We're going to call in a lot of favors and Everybody was working for minimum, pay because they wanted the experience on a feature, that kind of thing. So we went out and did a Kickstarter and just spent a ton of time and energy and effort on that, and raised 48,000 at the Kickstarter.
Wow.
And so we're like, okay, good, we're good to go. Let's go make this film. And the writing was from January to about July. Then there was rewrites throughout as we started to get into pre-production. I think we got funded in September, October through our Kickstarter, and we started filming the end of October in Carlsbad, actually. Carlsbad area. We filmed everything through San Diego County. So then into it, I brought in a line producer too. It was really helpful. And she had done other films also, but she was brought in late. We were just about to start filming when she was brought in. So had I brought her in sooner, she could have helped with catching some of the budget things earlier on, I think. But anyway, with all that said and done, we had everybody on payroll, which is a thing now. It wasn't then. Most of the productions I learned were paying everybody with 1099s as contractors, but I had everybody on payroll. And so also that's a requirement of SAG. We went through, are we going to do SAG or not do SAG? We had the opportunity through Terry's acting coaching that she knew Naveed Negabond, who was willing to come in for a day and film with us for a role to help our project and help Terry. It was really a favor for Terry. So he came in and so we're like, well, we do need to have it be SAG now. So we now need to learn how to do a SAG contract production. And so we learned that, but SAG requires that everybody, at least on SAG, goes through payroll. So we're like, well, we may as well put everybody on payroll. So we did. But then the last week of production, we ran out of some money. So I had to figure out ways to cover that, because as the producer, everything falls on your back. You're basically the CEO of the project. It all rolls up to you. You're responsible for everything. And so, I had a lot of sleep lost during the production because of this stuff. Yeah. But I ended up contributing my commissions and salary from my work and actually selling my car to get money to be able to pay off the SAG and crew payroll to get that all those commitments taken care of. And so then we were whole. And then I had a film on these 2 drives that next needed to learn about post-production.
Right. Yeah, and there's that. How did you get your editor? Did you just reach out?
After getting through production and finalizing all of that, I just took a step back because I also needed to learn post-production. And during that process, I started to reach out. And Terry and I did some 48-hour projects together, which actually is a really good way to bring in crew, because everybody's a volunteer. Make a short film and learn if you can work together. So I highly recommend that to students. Say, hey, go make a 48-hour film, bring in the crew that you think you want to work with, and then at the end of the 48 hours, if you want to or not.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot you got to do in a short period of time. Yeah. And that's actually how we found, we had 2 editors. We had Jackie Bento and Jana Resnick. Jana was in a program, Jody was teaching, and she may still be teaching at UCSD video production. And Jana went through her program. And so between a combination of Jackie and Jody, Jana was recommended. So the 2 of them, Jana and Jackie, ended up editing the film. And our sound guy, Peter Flynn, who's super knowledgeable, and thank goodness we had him on our project in film. He went to film school. He did film for big companies in LA. Really solid sound guy, but in film, he just is super solid all around. And so he became our post-production supervisor because, he knew, the prod, and he actually knew editing as well and the sound part of it. So he helped move that throughout the process. And then we realized in editing, as we started to get our first cuts and our assemblies, that their storyline was missing and needed to be reworked a bit. So we went back for some reshoots. So it did take quite a bit. And that's why, we started at the end of 2013, but it didn't get released 2017 because it took us 13, 14, 15 to get our reshoots and really get the project to where we felt it comfortable to put it out there for distributors to look at.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and then that took a year, to really go out there. I flew to con, I went to festivals, I went all around to meet people, to find and meet with distributors till we found indie rights.
Okay. I've actually heard of indie rights from another podcast to be named, or to not be named, I should say. I heard they're a great company, actually. That's really awesome. How did you even land with them? Like, how did you even connect with them in the first place?
Well, in my effort to get out there and meet people and network and learn everything I can in the film industry, I was out at a lot of festivals. And I got to the point where not only visiting festivals, but I got involved in the Catalina Film Festival because I knew some people who run the festival that I had met, and they wanted me to come on board with the festival. And I ended up joining the Catalina Island Film Festival as the director of VIP Hospitality. And I met Indie Rights when they were on a panel at that festival.
Mm.
And I talked to her, and she says, "This sounds like a great project for us and our slate, but I'm going off to con, and so let's just talk after." And I thought, well, you know what? I think I'm going to go to con too, because I want to meet with people there. It's one of the top markets, and
Yeah.
so I thought, just furthering along my education, I chalked it up to the cost being part of educating. And I was able to, I had from the semiconductor industry contacts that I had a friend who had an apartment in con.
Oh,
So that
wow.
just kind of lined up. I got to rent that for cheap, and got a really cheap airfare. And, so I'm going to con. So I did, and I met with them there. And I said, okay, well, just so you know, I'm going to follow you around the world until you take our film.
That's great.
So
Persistence. That's
that was
great.
funny.
That is
But
persistence
they
on a
liked
whole
it,
nother level.
and so they took it on. And I'm happy that our first film ended up landing with them, because they're filmmakers, and the reason they started in distribution 25 years ago was because they didn't like the distribution landscape where filmmakers never made money, and all the revenue ended up getting sucked up in marketing fees and such. And so they were great ones to start with for my first feature. They were well dialed into all the top platforms, Amazon. And throughout this process since 2017, they're ahead of the game in getting films on platforms. So I'm happy with where we landed that first film with.
Yeah, that's great. And what were some of the platforms that they distributed to? I mean, the
Um,
way I watched the film was on Tubi, and for people who don't know, that is an AVOD platform, advertising basically. You know those platforms, I'm sure. People who are listening
yeah,
that
anybody
play
can get it too.
ads. It's advertising video on demand, right? So that's just one, but then it's on Prime too. What are some of the other ways people can watch?
Yeah. So the advertising platforms are really taking off. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what cable used to be, where you'd watch cable, and cable would get their money through advertisements. So that's how Tubi gets their money. So they don't need subscriptions. Anybody can watch it. So it's really nice to have the film a place where you can kind of just tell everybody. I think they're in North America, but they're expanding out of the country. Anybody can watch it for free on Tubi. It's also on Amazon Prime, but then you have to have a subscription for that, or for rent. Could rent it on Prime if you don't have a subscription for Prime. It's available for rent. It's on Google Play. It's on iTunes. It's on Roku channel now. That's a new one. It just got added on too, because as they get more and more channels, each of their films can get on more and more channels too. So it's a curated process. It doesn't mean that I think they have a slate of something like 500-600 films. All films don't get on all the platforms.
Mm.
It's curated in terms of the platforms have to pick um, which films they want. They could pretty much get everybody on Amazon. But beyond that, it's a curated process what platforms you get on. So we're on, I think, 8 different platforms right now. We did actually have a theatrical release too. We had the option of that, which did cost us a small amount of money. You can recoup that money if you get enough, theater seats, because you pay for the theater, but you then get your ticket sales back.
Mm.
When theaters were open, this is back in 2017 we're talking about. So
Right.
it was a Hollywood premiere, which we thought would be super cool. We had a real passionate, involved cast and crew, so we had a good turnout of cast and crew coming there, and being able to sit down and watch it on the big screen and watch it in the theater in Hollywood. It was an indie theater, Arena Cine Lounge is where it was.
Mm.
So that was cool.
Wow.
And it was playing there for a week. And then we had a premiere in San Diego at the Encinitas La Paloma Theater. It was there for one night. We filled that theater also. And that was a event with Smart Recovery. So all proceeds were donated to Smart Recovery.
That's awesome. Yeah. Great way to partner and share, first of all, share the film with an organization that's reputable and that's related to the main topic of your film. I think that's very ingenious, actually. But two, just getting the word out and supporting the cause. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems to be more and more key these days. The films, whether they're narrative or documentary, having some kind of a message in the film is important. It's falling into either that or horror. You know what I mean? Horror has their own following just because it's that and scary, and they
Right.
have a huge audience. Or other films need to have some kind of message to really capture an audience. It needs to have a music undertone or a message undertone or something that that helps get out there to that niche audience. And even with indie rights, they've said like our baseball films do well and our military films do well because it's a really set targeted market. So the filmmakers can target right to that market to get it out there and seen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one other thing I was going to ask you about the process of making the film was were there any unexpected challenges that you faced besides, of course, the budget situation that you mentioned, having run out of money towards the end? I'm sure that was unexpected, but
Oh yeah, there were
anything,
tons.
yeah, on set, like, was there any sort of things that popped up that you were not expecting at all?
Every day.
Oh,
But we just work through them. I mean, that's what you do. Every day there's something new. It's like, oh gosh, I would have never thought about that. Like, and this was pre-COVID, way pre-COVID. But there was one day that 2 days before, the person we had cast for this one role got a 104-degree temperature. So we're like, okay, well, you can't come on set and get everybody sick. And even if your temperature's gone in 2 days, that's, still not cool. We had to cast that role within 2 days,
mm,
recast that role within 2 days. We had that. Um, Transportation issues, people late, if somebody's late, and then, if they're a half hour late, and if they're, say, makeup people, then everything just waits, and you're paying everybody just to wait.
right.
So how do you manage through that? And there are unexpected things that come up, but say having two makeup people or having backup plan B and C for almost everything is key. Food, just making sure you're providing food that complies with everybody's allergies and diets and such, and having some backup plans for that. The budget was probably the biggest one. There's things technology-wise, like run out of batteries. Is the backup happening the way that it should be? Are we looking at making sure that transfers are happening? Dropping a camera at one point, then we have to have a replacement camera immediately to continue. And so, yeah, every day there's something. And so you always have to, as a producer, have backup plan B and C in your mind
Right. Yeah. Good
and
advice.
just be flexible.
Yeah, absolutely. What's one or a few words of advice that you would give to young people like me or film students or people who just want to make that passion project happen? Either turning that short script into a feature or just coming up with that one idea and then succeeding in that, like taking that film and making it into the vision that you had entailed. So,
Well, I would highly recommend doing a short first, which I didn't do and I should have. It would have learning all the lessons at a smaller scale is a great thing to do, and being able to we got super lucky with cast and crew, but doing a short film is going to be just a much smarter thing to do. Then also with, whether it's a passion project or not, by doing a short with whatever theme film you want, that can get made into a feature because it can become your promo. you're showing your production value. And everybody, we'd go out there, it's like, well, why would I give you any money, professional people in the industry, when you've never made a film, for one, and you've got no portfolio to see? How do I know it's not going to be crap?
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, just because we're going to make something great. Well, okay, but we're
Right.
talking about, real money here. So
Yeah.
you do need to build a portfolio, and building that through shorts to then show that you have production value and that you've learned your lessons in filmmaking and that you know what you're doing and it's not just a hobby. You're going to be able to finish it. That's all really important to do. And those shorts can become promos for taking that into a feature. And that's happening more and more these days. Even if it's a 2-3 minute.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of really good festivals out there, and more festivals now than ever. Film Freeway, as you know, great
Mhm.
place to just search and add to cart, a whole bunch of different festivals.
It can be addicting.
Yeah, it's actually kind of scary. I helped submit some films. One was a 48. The other was a short film I worked on earlier, like February, before COVID happened. And I know there's just so many festivals out there. I just had a hard time choosing. So,
It
what?
is hard to choose. It's really, there's so many. There's like, what, 9,000 festivals out there or
It's
something?
crazy.
So picking the ones that are right for your film and honing in and not spending too much money on that, and trying some, and it gives you kind of your test of your film too. If it's starting to get accepted in a lot of places, that gives you validation that, okay, maybe I will submit to another 10, like maybe start with 10 and then do 10 more. But each one should be looked at as appropriate for your film. Like went we had a lot of female filmmakers. We had our editors and our writer, our director, our composer, our line producer, our associate producer, our producer. We're all female. So we tried to submit to a lot of female filmmaker um, festivals, and that was good. Local festivals, that was good. So
Yeah.
and we got recommendations from other people too. We saw, other filmmakers that we knew of that had similar kind of films. Oh, well, they're getting into these festivals and they liked that festival experience, then we'd submit to that festival
Yeah.
too.
And it was obviously a good idea to submit to a local San Diego Film Festival, which is how I heard about you and the film Carving a Life,
Yeah.
and happened to be working with Jody at the Film Consortium for a while. And that summer, I was actually editing the red carpet videos for the Film Awards, and that's how
Great.
your film came up. And you, and did the film actually win? I think Audience Choice.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
did. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
that's
Hmm.
awesome. What other festivals did you submit to and actually win?
Idlewild Film Festival. We were selected there, and we won a couple of different awards. There was screenwriting and cinematography and directing.
Wow.
Um, there was a couple there. I'm trying to remember. It's been quite some time now, but we submitted to probably 30 or so. We
Wow.
got into, I think, at least 10.
Okay.
There was an Indie Fest one also. We won Best Indie Film there. And there was a Los Angeles Independent Film Festival that we won, I think, Best Picture there. And so we did pretty well. It's on our IMDb, actually.
Yeah, people, I'll actually put the link in the YouTube description as
Okay,
well as the show notes for this episode. So I'll make sure all the resources are there for people to find out more
great.
about the film. One last thing, what are you doing now, and how did that experience in Carving a Life help you to get you to where you are now, basically?
Okay. Well, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with producing because it's hard work. It's really hard work. It's not as fun as the creative work, because the creative work is like, you almost have more tangible results, but good or bad. It can be both spectrums. But I took some time off to just reflect after this film, because it was quite a journey. I mean, we're talking 2013 to 2017. And so I took some time to reflect, but I keep falling back into producing because my business background, and I'm doing production accounting now, and I've done training with entertainment partners in production accounting. I'm doing a lot of line producing. I'm doing a lot of budgeting, And line producing, I get hired early on in the process to do budgets for investors on projects, because you have to have a budget. You need to have your script, and you need to have some kind of a plan put together to submit to investors. So I'm doing a lot of that. And I'm developing some features too. So I've got two now in the more $1 to $2 million range. I've done 4 films in the lower budget, under 1 million range. And now I'm doing more of the $1 to $2 million development range. And so I'm branching out. I've become a member of Producer Guild of America, which is the professional trade association. It's not a union or guild, but it's a trade association. Member of Women in Film, and member of Film Independent, and the San Diego Media Pros, San Diego Film Consortium. So I'm definitely solidly planted in professional producer now, because I have a portfolio, I have the experience, and I just keep trying to ratchet up each time into a new realm, whether it be budget or the cast level that we're looking at now, or A-list casters for some of these films, 2.5 million, and that process. So now I'm consumed with learning about funding at that level, which is very, very different. It's through, pre-sales, and through financing, and through equity investors. And so I've taken the entire independent producing course at UCLA to learn that. And that was a 1.5-year program. I took the 1.5-year program on screenwriting as well through UCLA, which I could do all online, and that's before everything became online. But
Right.
great programs. I recommend that people do get the education, because you also can network through that. You meet other people through your classes and your instructors. I took a production accounting class, and one of the instructors was the VP of Finance for Universal Pictures.
Wow.
And part of what he was talking about in our class was, well, when we were out filming, Fast and the Furious, we had a team of 40 and our production accountant, and there was 3 of them who were just in charge of cars and the accounting related to cars. And it was
Wow.
fascinating to learn studio level production accounting. But they also, the other instructor is independent producer, so we learned both sides of it there, and just constantly learning. That's key. You may think, and that's a lesson for students too, is get the education, get the mentors, surround yourself with people who know what they're doing, and are willing to share and help you through that process. And learn every day as much as you can, and get on set. Just get on set.
Absolutely.
When we can.
When we
Can't really right
can.
now, but when we
Right.
can.
It's a really strange time right now. But yeah, once this is all over, for sure. Yeah, it's probably helpful for people who are in Southern California or New York, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
The bigger cities are the place to be when it comes to being on set. So yeah. Well, thanks so much for talking a lot about your experience. It's really fascinating. Where can people find
Yeah.
Carving a Life one more time, as well as the other
Okay.
films that you've done, and more about you in general?
All right. So Tubi is a really good resource. Tubi TV, to find Carving Life there and search for it. On our website, on Life and Reels Productions, is all of our projects. It's either trailers for something, Carving Life is there, and where you can watch it. There's a link to all the places that it's at. It's at iTunes, Amazon Prime. It's in other countries on Amazon. Tubi, I think it's in Mexico, and Amazon, it's in Mexico. It's even in Spanish with not subtitles, the actual film. We paid to get the film done in Spanish.
Wow.
For Mexico, Spain, and to be in those territories. Let's see, Google Play, Microsoft. I said iTunes already. I think Roku channel is a new one. So it's on the Roku channel now too. That's another place you can watch it. But the list of everywhere you can watch it is on our website, and also IMDb, I think, shares where you can watch it. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa. You're an amazing resource. So I'm glad to have heard about you through Jody and the Film Consortium.
Yeah, well,
it's all about
thank you for
networking.
having me.
Yeah, of
a
course.
lot of people help me, and I want to help people too. So
Thanks.
thank you.
Really appreciate your help. Thanks. All right, guys. I really hope you enjoyed that episode with Lisa Bruhn. Oh, man. It was a really fun time talking to her. Just learning about her story is really, really inspiring for me as a young person wanting to make an independent feature. Features are of great interest to me. I don't know about you, but I think it should be of interest to you if you're wanting to direct long term, whether it's a hobby or if it's a profession. I mentioned this with our previous guest, Light, the artist, that you don't have to be professional, quote unquote, professional and pursuing it full time with, because especially if you have a full-time job already, it's really not that feasible to do a full-time career in film unless you want to change careers entirely, which you can. You just got to build your way up. And one of those big ways is doing it on the side, which is what Lisa had to do. And now she's doing $1 Million budget. So if that's not enough of an inspiration to you all, I just want you to know that you can do whatever you want to do with your filmmaking journey. You just got to work hard and reach out to people, network. As much as it seems uncomfortable, you should network because it's super important. I wouldn't be here without networking. Obviously, I wouldn't have known about Lisa because of the Film Consortium, San Diego. That's how I knew about her, and she's been on my radar ever since. And now I finally got to talk to her. So it's a really cool thing to network and just get your work out there. Don't be afraid to be public about it. Just don't be shy to share your work with other people. Gain some feedback. It's a really cool way of just pursuing your passion, whether you're professional or not. Anyway, guys, thank you guys so much for watching this episode. If you're watching on YouTube, many thanks. We are now on YouTube, so if you haven't already, go ahead and check out the YouTube channel and subscribe. So, YouTube channel is now live and up to date if you're watching this episode. So you can see all the previous episodes and the new ones to come, posted every week, every Monday at 9 a.m. 8 a.m. Pacific time, 9 a.m. my time. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. Remember that you are gifted, you are creative, and you are able. Talk to you guys next week.
That's all from this episode of the Film Fraternity Podcast. For more filmmaking tips and tricks you can use on your next project, visit www.filmfrat.com. That's FILMFRAT.com.